I could be 350 pounds and say, yeah, I'm 350 pounds, but I'm healthy. And I knew I wasn't, but I could convince myself of pretty much anything I wanted to.
Welcome to How I Lost It, where we learn the stories behind some of the biggest weight loss successes. I'm Marley Ficalora. Now let's begin our interview.
All right, everyone. So this is Tim Kaufman joining us on How I Lost It. I'm really excited for you guys to hear his story. So he's going to walk us through it. So first, I just want you to introduce yourself to everyone that's going to listen to this on iTunes or wherever they listen to podcasts. Just who is Tim Kaufman and what do you do?
So I'm Tim Kaufman. I'm from Alden, New York, which most people won't know where that is. So it's about 20 miles east of Buffalo. And I'm actually a high school teacher. I teach engineering, but I actually teach like college curriculum to high school kids so they can get college credit for it. And I'm married, and I have two kids that are kind of older, 20, 22, and 26.
Awesome. So let's dive into your story. So the first thing I want to do is just we'll walk through how did you gain the weight, and then we'll walk through the aha moment, and then we'll walk through how you lost the weight, and then we'll talk kind of about what you're doing now after the fact. So just to start, kind of what was it like growing up? What were you eating? Was it like, how did it kind of start to gain? Did you gain all the weight as a child? Did you gain all the weight in your 20s? Kind of, can you walk us through kind of how it happened?
Yeah, so I grew up, we live in a really rural area, lots of farms and stuff. It's not quite as rural as it used to be, but I grew up on a dairy farm. My parents didn't own the farm, but we lived across the street, so I spent most of my childhood at the farm. And, I wasn't like, I was a big kid, but I was a strong kid because I worked hard. And so I was probably, normal to above normal weight. But as I worked, I kept thinking that I was like a klutz or accident prone. I kept like twisting ankles, blowing out my knees and stuff. And I thought I was just clumsy. But really what happened is as I got older, into my early 20s, my shoulder got so bad, it kept dislocating so badly that actually I would sneeze and it would dislocate, and it wouldn't go back in the socket. So I signed up. My doctor said that I needed surgery, this thing called arthroplasty, where they basically tighten everything up in there and pull it back together. And when they got in there, they started stretching everything, and what they noticed is everything was super stretchy. And so I was diagnosed with this disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder. So basically the glue that holds my body together is kind of like bubble gum. And so all my joints, like, people say they're double jointed or whatever, like that's over my whole body. So when I was younger, it didn't affect me so much. It was more like falling and twisting stuff. But as I got older, a lot of that chronic damage kind of built up and added up. And on the way out of the hospital after the surgery, the doctors handed me a bottle of Lortabs, hydrocodone. And so I started taking painkillers pretty young, like I say, early 20s. And, I built up a tolerance really quickly to them. And so we kept graduating to the next thing till I found myself in a few years, like on oxys and basically whatever I could get my hands on, plus all my prescriptions. But I was still in a ton of pain, and the disease, it just kept, adding in more and more damage on my joints. So then we didn't know what this was at the time, but I got on a drug called fentanyl that was prescribed actually by the doctor. And so I feel like that was kind of like the thing that kind of tripped me up. It slowed me down. I had always done manual labor. I worked in a factory, worked, very physical jobs. And the doctor said, you're not going to be able to do this much longer. So that's when I went into engineering and then later teaching. And I think that inactivity actually worked against me instead of for me. Because at least when I was moving, I was keeping everything kind of from the arthritis really catching up and seizing everything up. But just to kind of shorten the story up, through the years, like from my mid-20s to say my mid-30s, it was this cycle of more painkillers, and I just kept needing more and more. And then I got into drinking alcohol. And all these things were kind of an escape. And it sounds weird to say this, but fast food and, processed food gave me that same kind of opioid effect, and looking back, it's embarrassing, but, I'd sit at the drive-through, get that excitement like you're going to get your fix and, eat it. It would taste really delicious for a few minutes. And then, then you felt like crap. Then you got really tired. And then, you get all the regrets from seeing the packages and the wrappers. And it's a very similar, food addiction is very similar to opioid use, I think. Obviously, it doesn't come with all the crazy withdrawals and stuff, but there's a lot of the same psychological things happening. So at my very worst, everything kind of snowballed to really all I wanted to do was do as little as I could possibly do during the day to have a career and come home and just crash. And at my worst, I was on the max dose of fentanyl. And it was nothing for me to take 15 to 20 pills a night right before I went to bed, and I would chase it down with an entire liter of vodka. And I began to really hate life. Like I just wanted to be out of pain. And that's really, I wasn't so much after a buzz or anything. I just wanted to be out of pain. And a lot of the way I would comfort myself through the drugs and the alcohol and the food, it was just to get to the next day. So that's kind of how I got to be 400 pounds and almost immobile and an addict, really.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you compare it to, because there's so many different ways you can be addicted. There's obviously alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and they all have their vices, they all have their struggles, but it is really interesting that food has really, for so many people, become so challenging to overcome and such a battle. So I kind of want to talk about what you were eating during that time. I know you mentioned fast food. Kind of what was like your daily food routine when you were in like those mid-20s during those tough times? What was it like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
So I was a creature of habit. I did almost the same thing every day. And so I would always leave for work, and I would stop at Burger King and I would get 2 sandwiches. Then my wife would usually pack me some sort of lunch. Usually it was like leftover pizza. And I would always eat that like right after, and then I'd end up going out for lunch on top of that fast food. On the way home, I would get a couple things off the dollar menu. And as I'm doing that, I'm on my phone ordering pizza and wings for the night. So as a family, we ordered out usually about 4 to 5 nights a week. Pizza and chicken wings were usually our thing. And then we usually ate out on the weekends. Very rare for us to go grocery shopping. Very rare for us to cook anything at home. If we turned the oven on, it was for like Totina's pizza rolls or like jalapeno poppers or something, like processed that you just bake. And I have no doubt that, I was for sure up to 10,000 calories a day sometimes when I go back and do the math. So, yeah, my diet was absolutely horrible. It was about as bad as you could get.
Yeah, and so, well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for coming on and sharing all of this. I think it's great because a lot of people that are in this same situation can relate and they can learn. And I think you've understood that from telling your story a bunch of times. And it's just trying to get out there and trying to inspire people, to show people there is hope, show people there is a chance, and that we've all been there. And I just think, we just have to figure out what it is that's going to push us to the next level. So what was it? What was that aha moment? What was that epiphany? What made you go from, okay, I'm eating fast food, I'm eating chicken wings, I'm eating Totino's pizza roll at the best when I'm cooking, to now thinking, you know what, maybe there is more to life. Maybe I do have a future ahead of me that's better. Maybe I am going to take care of my family. What was that aha moment? If you could drill it down to one specific instance that really made you say, okay, I gotta make the change.
Yeah, there really wasn't one, but before we
Yeah.
do that, if we could just back up a little bit,
Yeah,
because
let's do
it's
it.
interesting. While you were talking, I was thinking that, some people, especially I do a lot of talks at high schools, and the kids just don't understand how you could eat that poorly. But really, like, I hate to go back to the correlation between drugs and food, but nobody wakes up one day and says, I want to eat fast food 3 times a day, every single day. Like, no one does that. No different than no one wants to, wake up every day with a hangover or withdrawals from opioids. No one does that. And I think it's important to realize that this is kind of a thing that doesn't just flip on. Like these are just habits that happen, and they're one poor choice after another leads us down this road. And I feel like, especially the people I work with, like you just wake up one day and you're like, how did I get here? So when I talk about the food I ate and the drugs and stuff, I think it's important to realize that, at some point, just like we're all on journeys, most of us watching this, hopefully are on journeys to get healthy. There's also a journey to get sick. And it's kind of the same thing. We're all in that process. So it's easy to just like get blasted by 10,000 calories, but I didn't wake up one day. That didn't just happen. It was a series of poor choices that kind of added up. So I just wanted to toss that in there.
Yeah, no, I think that's extremely important to talk about because I feel like we are creatures of habit, and routine can either be the best thing that ever happens to us, but we also don't look at sometimes it can be the worst thing that ever happens to us. And I think that's what's so important for anyone out there that's going to watch this or listen to this is, and I always say this all the time, and I'm sure you say it all the time too, is question everything you do, because even the good stuff, you may find out like some of your habits are really good. Maybe you're doing things that are helping you achieve success. Maybe you're doing things that are helping you be healthier. But there's also a lot of things that you may be doing that you're not even thinking about because they're just so routine that are actually causing a lot of the problems in your life. It could be drugs, it could be health, it could be partying, right? A lot of people drink in America on weekends. We go out on Saturday and Sunday. We let loose because we worked hard on a weekday. It's just how do you step back for a second, and it's harder to do than it is to say, but how do you step back? How do you look in the mirror? How do you remove yourself from yourself and say, like, what am I doing? And am I happy with what I'm doing? Because it does just become so habitual. You get so lost in it. It happens with me with work too. I'll be working so much that I feel like I'm just going in the same place and that I haven't done anything.
Right.
I haven't reinvented myself. And I'm sure you've experienced this as well. And you probably see a lot of kids with this in school that are struggling in school, and they keep trying the same way and it's not working. And it could be so many outside forces with that. But I think it's very important that you touched upon that it's not only important to form good habits, but it's also important to understand how your bad habit happened. And it developed over a lot of time. A lot of people have this idea that all of a sudden they're going to lose 500 pounds, and that's a big number, but they're going to lose all this weight, and it's going to happen tomorrow, and we want it to happen right away. And unfortunately, that's not the way the weight came on. That's not the way it started, so it's not the way it's going to come off. It's going to take as much time. It may take a little bit less to lose it, but it's still going to take a lot of effort and a lot of time, so you have to be really committed to it because it didn't just come on in one day, so it's not just going to come off in one day. So I think it really takes that, commitment.
Right, and I think it's also important to understand too that what you did, I took 100 pounds off like really fast, like
Yeah.
in not even a year. But what I ate then would not work for me now. So I think it's a very dynamic thing, and because something can get you so far, and I'm still working on it now, kind of like I'm always like reassessing. Well, brown rice is great, but I overeat it too much. So back when I was 400 pounds, brown rice I lost a lot of weight. But now, I need to bump up on the vegetables more, the non-starchy. So I think it's important not only to understand that we get in the rut, but we also always have to keep changing. I read something the other day that said, this is a little dramatic, but it says the only difference between a rut and a grave are the dimensions. So I thought that was pretty interesting
Yeah,
concept.
that is really interesting.
So the catalyst, that's where you want to go next, right?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's talk about. And you said it was a series of events, and that's totally fine. It doesn't happen the same for everyone. It's not always, one dramatic thing that happens. But kind of, what was the thing that started to shift you towards, a better and healthier future?
Yeah, so believe it or not, it wasn't plants. And everyone wants to hear this magic moment that the light came on. I ended up there, but honestly, the first thing that kind of switched for me was gratitude. And because what happened to me, like I had a legitimate reason to be, you know, complaining about my legs and stuff like that, and I was in pain, 100% of the time. Pain never left. I went to bed with pain. I woke up with pain. I could never sleep because I was in pain. And then the more drugs I would take, believe it or not, you think they would knock you out, but you're kind of sleeping, but you still have this like insomnia. So um, I had convinced myself that I had the right to be miserable, the right to be bitter. And I searched out every day everything that was wrong with me. And my family kind of latched on to the idea that, well, dad's sick, and my wife was just dealing with a sick husband. We couldn't really go anywhere. 'Cause I could hardly get in the car because I was always so nauseous from the narcotics. Um, but we got a phone call, and Heather's mom, Heather and I have been married 26 years, coming up here in August, and um, our families are super close because we started dating like in high school. So her mom was super close to me, and she was like a second mom. And she had like a flu kind of thing that just wasn't going away; it was kind of lingering. So she went to the doctor and was diagnosed with leukemia, and that sent our whole life into a spin. It was like the brakes came on. There was no more softball practice for the kids. It was who's going to sit with mom up at the hospital. And so we spent a lot of time up at the Cancer Institute. We call it Roswell here. It's like a big, huge cancer center. And what happened was, really, I mean, if you want to talk about a catalyst for that part of it, I walked up to visit her mom, and she was sleeping. She was super tired. She literally was trying to fight to live through another day just to get another transfusion. And the one day I got up there and she was sound asleep, and she opened her eyes super slow, and she's, "How's your knee?" And it just crushed me. Here this woman's on her deathbed and she's worrying how my knee was, because that's all I did was complain. And I walked out of there that night and something kind of switched in my head, thinking, I'm complaining my whole life about how my legs hurt, and there's people behind me getting their legs amputated. And while mine hurt, I still had them. And while my mom laid in that hospital bed, I got to go home that night. And it started kind of reframing life that, yeah, I had a lot of difficulties and a lot of problems, but there were a lot of people that would trade their lives with me today. So I started becoming super, super aware of the things that I was blessed with. And that was a big moment in my life, because I feel like until then, I would go to sleep sometimes and I didn't know if I'd wake up. And even though I had a family that loved me, like, I don't think I was suicidal, but I don't really know if I cared too much whether I woke up or not. But then when you watch someone fight for their life, it kind of shows you that, you have it better than they do. And you need to respect that. And life is a gift, and that kind of shed a new light for me. While we were dealing with Heather's mom, my father went in. He had we thought he had pneumonia. He went in for a chest x-ray, and the x-ray showed that he was stage 4 renal cancer that had metastasized to his whole body. And my dad was my best friend in the whole world. We did everything together. We hunted together, fished together. He taught me everything. He was my best buddy. And the doctors gave him 6 months to live. And my dad didn't make it 6 months. He made it 6 weeks to the day. And shortly after that, my wife's mom lost her battle with leukemia that turned into lymphoma, then a brain tumor. And she fought like crazy, and we lost her. And, through all that, it really woke me up to say that, this is not a game. And you need to respect what you have and appreciate what you have. And so honestly, seeing my wife go through all this, my wife used to have to put my socks and shoes on me in the morning. And I'll never forget this one day. She slid my sock up and she kind of tapped the side of my leg like you would do to a little kid. She goes, "You're all set." And I remember just thinking that all these funerals we had planned and the brunches and everything, like she was going to have to do this whole process again for me. Because there's no way I would have made it through another year. My doctor knew it. I knew it. My blood pressure was 255 over 115. And I was on 2 different blood pressure medicines, calcium channel blocker and a beta blocker. My heart would beat so hard we put a phone, back when we had real phones, we put the phone on my chest and it would actually jump off my chest and you could see air underneath it every beat of my heart. I was really sick. My kidneys were actually shutting down. I knew what was happening. I knew they would shut down, and I wouldn't say anything because I knew that I had done it to myself. So really what I was trying to do is just get some space in between funerals. Like, I kind of had accepted what was happening to me, and I just thought it was the cards that I had been dealt, and I was playing them the way I could. So what I did is, just to see if I could do something, I went online and started doing some research, and I found bariatric surgery. And so I had this all planned out. This is how I was going to fix everything, you know. And I got a hold of a company here in Buffalo. I went to a few meetings, did all the paperwork, applications, and I was all set to get bariatric surgery. But when I went into my doctor's office, that's when they actually found my blood pressure was 255 over 115. And he was freaking out because my pulse was over 125 just sitting in a chair. And, you know, he told me, he said he's never not signed off on the surgery, but he wouldn't let me get surgery because I was just too sick. So I went home and I thought that was it. You know, I thought I'm done. You know, and you know, I had spent, you know, we're, you know, my family and myself very strong in our faith, and you know, I had prayed my whole life for miracles, but I never really did anything like, you know, and so something hit me that night that, you know, instead of praying for huge miracles, let's be thankful for the strength that I was given already, and all the things that I had been blessed with. And really what I did is just try to do one like little thing every day. And it sounds like crazy, but some of the things that I did was like, you know, I could hardly get out of a chair. And so what I would do, I knew I could get out of a chair once. I would go to my office, and every time I stood up, I wrote it down before I went to bed the night before. I'd get out of chair two times. And so I'd go to my office, I'd stand up, I'd sit back down and stand up. And it doesn't sound like much, but really what I was doing is doubling, you know, my work. And, you know, I just started walking. The first walk I ever took, I couldn't finish. I made it like 3/4 of a mile, and I had to sit there and wait for my family to come pick me up. It hurt. You know, I almost went to the emergency room. I was in severe pain, but something inside me wanted to go back and finish that walk. And I did start changing. I at least, if anything, I recognized that what I was eating had an effect on my body, because I started logging food, which was kind of weird for me. So I started like swapping out red meat. We were huge hunters. We used to get, you know, all our own meat from the farm, and we used to get it processed. We used to process sometimes 300 pounds of sausage on a weekend with my friends. That's like what we did. And so this whole idea of, you know, getting healthy meat was switching to like turkey and chicken. And, you know, at 400 pounds, when you change anything, you're going to see results. And I did, but I was still super sick. I was still on all my medicines. I think at one time I was almost on 20 pills a month. In fact, in 2009, I got my records from the insurance company. My insurance company paid like 19,000 and some change just for pharmaceuticals for me. So I was on a ton of medicine, but I was starting to lose weight. And then one day I sat down to watch Netflix, and a film called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead came on with Joe Cross. And if you don't know, the story is Joe Cross comes to the U.S. with a juicer from Australia. He's got a crazy cool accent, and he spends 60 days in the U.S. just consuming nothing but vegetable and fruit juice out of this juicer. And by the end of the movie, he's like loses 60 pounds, gets off all his medicine, meets a bunch of inspiring people along the way. And honestly, I did not care what he was doing. I just wanted what he had. I say to people in my presentations a lot, like, if he would have been juicing raccoon turds, that's what I'd be eating right now, because I didn't care. And it's probably a good thing I didn't understand what I was getting into, because I may not have done it. But before the show credits rolled, I had ordered a juicer on Amazon, and it happened to be around January. It'll be 6.5 years ago, January. And so I started a juice fast, just like, didn't put any thought into it. I just bought the juicer. I'm like, I'm doing a juice fast. And so, you know, I went to the store, got my little bag of vegetables, and I put it through the juicer on the 1st of the year. and about, I don't know, a quarter cup of juice came out. And I'm like, we have a problem. um, so it was kind of cool because, you know, I was then on a mission to find fruits and vegetables. Instead of, you know, we bought a lot of stuff from gas stations and stuff just on the way home, like snacks and stuff. So we actually had to find produce sources, farmers markets. I would go to restaurants and ask them where they get their carrots from so I could buy them in 25-pound like bags. So if the one thing that did is it taught us how to shop. But the first 3 days of the fast were absolutely terrible. But I just kept going to bed. Like I feel like I want to quit. I would go to bed, get up the next day, and I'd feel better. By day 4, the hunger had kind of subsided. In the 5th day, no matter how many times I tell a story, I get goosebumps telling this because to most people it doesn't sound like a big deal. But the 5th day, I actually woke up in the same position that I went to bed in. And that was all I ever wanted. You know, that was all the drugs and stuff and the alcohol. I just wanted to sleep to the night. And so 5 days into a juice fast, I got my first night of sleep, like in over a decade. And, you know, every day it seemed like something was like, oh, I forgot to take, you know, my Indocin for inflammation. And, you know, whoa, I never took that painkiller. And, you know, it just kept snowballing to, you know, I was losing weight obviously pretty rapidly, but it was more, you know, feeling my skin started clearing up. I started having more energy. I kind of got bored sitting on the couch. And then, you know, by 20 days into the fast, I felt amazing. But, you know, at the same time, I realized that committing to a 30-day juice fast, like I can't do this the rest of my life. But because I watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, Forks Over Knives popped up in my queue. And, you know, I tell people that Forks Over Knives didn't just save my life, it gave me a completely new one. Because that kind of like solidified that, you know, this juice fast was kind of like a challenge and unsustainable. But what I was seeing from Forks Over Knives, first of all, made me terribly frustrated and angry because I just watched my 2 favorite people in the world die from cancer. And then I see Dr. Campbell, you know, turning cancer on and off with not really insane amount of milk casing. Like it wasn't like crazy amounts. So I was angry. And as soon as the film was done, I actually went back and watched the whole thing over. And I thought, okay, so really what I got to do now is just eat what I'm putting in the juicer, add some whole grains and some legumes, and that's it. And I'm not going to say it was like that easy. There was a lot of stuff that I learned. That was basically the only information I had to go on. So, you know, I was still eating like tortilla chips and stuff, and, you know, then a lot of the hidden oils and stuff. So, but after I started doing that, the weight started dropping off, you know, and I kind of like, it kind of all happened together. I was doing like really stupid stuff. Like I remember standing over my juicer with a full dip of Copenhagen snuff in my mouth, and thinking, I'm drinking kale juice and I have tobacco in my mouth, and like something's just not making sense. So, you know, I feel like we try to fix health with one thing, but, you know, for me, I don't believe in accidents, but it was like this whole thing kind of like, well, if I'm going to eat kale, I probably should give up the tobacco and, you know, probably the alcohol, and it's not really a good mix either. And before I knew it, the fentanyl was a little different story, but before I knew it, the better I felt, the less I needed that escape. And, you know, today, you know, I talked about how I didn't know if I'd wake up and I didn't know if I cared. And today, honestly, you know, I have trouble sleeping in the morning. I would love to sleep in, but like I'm up at 5 because I can't wait to see what the day brings. And I'm just so thankful for a new day. It's such a different, you know, emotionally, it's such a crazy phase. It's nuts. But yeah, so that's how I started my plant-based journey. It wasn't, you know, this direct path. Like some people, it wasn't this, you know, switch. I did flip a switch for the meat and the dairy. But, you know, it was a process to get, you know, to find out actually what healthy food is. And I think that in itself is a problem. We sometimes we try to tend. So I teach plant-based classes, and the first question, I don't even introduce myself. I walk out there and I say, is bacon healthy? And every single person in that room will say no. And I'm like, it is compared to methamphetamine. And we need to start seeing food as that, is oatmeal healthy? Yes, it's obviously more healthy than eggs and bacon, but it's not as healthy as kale. So, that was a process for me to understand that there's a sliding scale on food. Um, brown rice is super healthy, but a bowl of greens and with some beans on the top is more nutrient dense and healthier. So that's how I became plant based, and
Uh,
so
yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I think that's an amazing journey. Thank you for sharing that. And it isn't so direct all the time, and it's okay to do other diets or try other things or ease into plant-based. Maybe it doesn't happen overnight. But one of the things that I think that people should take away from what you said, there's a ton of things that people should take away from what you said, because you gave a lot of really important information that I think is going to land with a lot of people. And people are going to be able to see themselves in certain situations that you were in, since you went through so many different things. But something that I really want people to understand that is one of the keys is that after you do kind of have that moment that kind of shakes you, is where do you get your education? How do you learn about the benefits of this? Because the more education you have about food, the better decisions you're going to make about food. So Forks Over Knives, an amazing documentary. And I think there's a lot of amazing doctors behind that and a lot of scientific evidence behind that. And some of the smartest people in our planet are the ones that did that research. So we know it solidifies that, okay, this is real. This isn't something that people are just going around shouting out or yelling out or saying it's working. It's actually proven to work, and that makes it so that you feel a bit more confident, and then you can do this for a long-term success rather than being a challenge or a couple-day thing. And so it was great that you had that. I liked hearing your experience of you went to you heard Joe Cross, right? That fat, sick, and nearly dead, and that gave you kind of that kickstart. Like, I'll just do whatever that guy's doing to get some results quick, because you had thought about bariatric surgery, you got rejected, so you were looking for something that was you knew you wanted to get healthy, but you just need to figure out how can you do this and how can you do it as quickly as possible. And I think that's what a lot of people look for, or just any solution that they can find, any answer that they can find. And then you went through this educational period where you learned from that documentary. So, and then now you're teaching other people. Now you're educating others, because I really do believe that and maybe you agree or you don't agree, but I really believe that we have such a lack of education about food. We just don't think about it. The only time we're educated about food is if there's a buy one get one free on Doritos, or if the dollar menu now has apple pies. And it's disappointing that we're only educated about food about discounts or fast food drive-thrus, or a new nacho fries from Taco Bell, or a new Cooler Ranch Dorito taco, but we're not learning about, oh, there's these micronutrients in kale that can help you with whatever it is. Carrots are helping you with this, beans are helping you with that. We're learning about food in the wrong way. We're learning about it in kind of what is the fastest, most flavorful, scientific experiment we can create, and what's the cheapest we can get it, rather than thinking about what's this going to do for my body, how is this going to help me, and what am I actually, what am I doing, what am I eating, and why am I eating it, and what impact is it having on me. So I think it's great that you're educating. Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like, I went into it backwards, which I'm sure most people do, to lose weight. And really, if we can get people to like shift that whole thinking and let's get healthy, and the weight will just happen. And that's something that, like, I think honestly that it's education, but it's also the fact people don't realize what an important role food plays in their health. Like, I know I didn't. Like, you hear your whole life, like, eat your broccoli because it's good for you, but I don't think you really understand just how good it is until you actually feel it. And a lot of people that go through, like, we teach a 6-week class here locally, and I've heard this from so many people that, like, they didn't know what was wrong until it was right. You know what I mean? Like, so if you take your car to a mechanic and they said you need a new wheel bearing, it's like, no, I don't. And then you drive it and you're like, oh, I guess I did need that. And we don't realize what an important role food plays on our health. I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing that has become a mentality that we apply to everything, this isn't just food, is that if it's not broke, don't fix it. We don't We don't prevent things before they occur. Rarely do we go see a dentist until we have the cavity, and then we fix the cavity after the cavity is already there, rather than getting that filling or getting the teeth cleaned. There's so many examples of that, but the car example is another example. You don't check your oil until your oil, is low, and until your light turns on. And I think that mentality with your health is very dangerous, and it leads us to people having these aha and epiphany moments at very serious times in their lives with their health. It could be a heart attack. They could have just had their second heart attack, sometimes a third heart attack. They can have a stroke. They can have their first, medication prescribed to them. They can have type 2 diabetes diagnosed to them. Something happens that just shakes their world. If it's a financial shake.
Catastrophes.
Yeah, and it's taking that in order for people to make that switch. And I see it all the time. People are coming all the time, and it's not just weight gain. People can get up to 300, 400, even 500 pounds and not switch. And it's not because, like you're saying, it's slow progression. It's habitual. You don't even realize what's happening. It's just happening. It's hard when you look in the mirror every single day to notice a change. It would take you looking in the mirror and then going back and looking in the mirror 3 months later to notice a change, because it's so gradual. And it's just a weird way to equate it. But we got a puppy. My girlfriend and I got a puppy. And when she was tiny, I was with her every single day. And I couldn't tell that she was getting bigger. But when I saw a friend that I hadn't seen for a month or 2 months, they say, wow, she's so big now. And I'm like, I can't tell. She looks the same exact size, even though she had doubled or tripled in size, because I was with her all the time. And when you're with yourself all the time, it's really hard to tell that something's going wrong, or that something bad is happening, or that weight is being gained, because you're with yourself every single day. There's no break. So it's hard to have that outside perspective, or to say, have an honest conversation. And my whole goal, and I think it's your goal with educating as well, is how do we allow people to achieve the results that you have achieved, that I've achieved? How do you get to the point where you are happy and you are healthy? And there's still problems, there's still bumps, we all struggle still. But how do you get to the point where you start to realize there's benefits to this, and you really thoroughly, genuinely are putting your health as your number one priority? And it's hard, but I want to get it to people before that aha moment, before that epiphany. How do we get someone to make that change before it's too late? Because a lot of people are dying, and that's why we need to be out there and educating. And stories like yours are inspiring, and they help a lot of people. So.
Yeah, but the thing that's really inspiring is not so much even my story, it's the fact that this works every single time. Like, it's, to me, the inspiring part of this is actually, and I almost feel bad about this, and I'm sure you get this too. When we first started doing this, we'd have a type 2 diabetic come in, and he'd come into our class, and 3 weeks later, he's like, I can't believe it. I haven't taken insulin. It's the first time in 2 decades. And we used to get so excited, and we cry and everything. And now, now people coming in, I'm like, well, what do you think was going to happen? And I almost feel bad that I lost that, but that's the inspiring part. That this is not just look at it. If I had self-control, right, and I had discipline, for habit changing, I would have never got to be 400 pounds. It has nothing to do with that. And I think, along with what you said about that slow, that changes are so slow you don't see them, there's another little thing at play, and it's the rationalizing. And so, I could be 350 pounds and say, yeah, I'm 350 pounds, but I'm healthy. And I knew I wasn't, but I could convince myself of pretty much anything I wanted to. But what's cool about this is it doesn't take self-control. It doesn't take discipline. It just takes understanding, what real food is. And the only thing that matters is not this huge long-term plan. The only thing that matters is the plate that you're going to eat next. That's all that matters. And people overthink this. And it's like the education thing. I'm kind of glad that I didn't have all the education that's out there now. All I had was a film. And I think that kind of helped me, because honestly, you can get rid of all that stuff about microbiome and, all this phytonutrient stuff. Just make your next plate the healthiest meal you can make it. And everything else will take care of itself. It's just, it works, and it works every time.
Yeah, it's so simple. But, what I realized throughout the course of my life is sometimes the most simple things are the most challenging things to figure out. And so I do acting. I've been on TV shows. And when I first started acting, I would always kind of be big, overact. I went to 15 different acting classes, the best acting teachers, the best acting schools, studied with, major celebrities. And I'm doing all this acting training and I'm trying to learn how to act. And finally, after about 5 years of acting and auditioning a million times and not landing anything, not booking anything, figuring out what's wrong, getting rejected a million times, I am like, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And then one day I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go into an audition and I'm not going to act. I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to be me.
Right.
And I booked Law and Order, a guest star role on Law and Order. And then I booked and I booked and I booked. And I was like, this whole time, all I had to do was be me. That was what acting was. And I know there's more to it and there's all that sort of stuff. And I had to learn all that in order to get to that place where I realized it was so simple. But it is so true. And even when you think about writing, when you're writing, you sometimes you try to say all these words, you try to write these big sentences, you try to explain as much as you possibly can, when in truth, the best writing is the most simple and concise words that explain your point in a very easy way to understand. But to get to that point, think about how hard it is. You sit there and you're trying to put your words down on a paper that people will understand, but it's hard to make it simple. And so you're right, it's so simple and it really works. Like we're not just making this up, it actually works. I have thousands of people that message me. You probably had a ridiculous amount of people that message you. You are a living testimonial. We know it's so simple. Just think about your next bite. Just eat the stuff that grew from the ground. Just eat the stuff that grew from the trees. Don't worry about micronutrients, macronutrients, microbiome. Don't worry about protein or whatever. There's so many different scientific terms that now all of a sudden we're scientists. We have to know all these sorts of things. Now it's very challenging. I don't think I could do this if I had to count all my macros and all my micros and portion control. I wouldn't have been able to do 600 days in a produce section. No way. I would have quit after like 6 hours if I was counting all those sorts of things. So, I mean, I'm glad that people are starting to think about nutrition, and there's definitely benefits to all that scientific stuff.
Oh, yeah, and it's interesting. Like, sorry.
No, keep going. No, I want to hear what you're saying.
No, it's interesting, and I try to be a scholar on it because it's super interesting. But at the same time, especially when we're trying to show other people this path, it's important not to get like so distracted by all that stuff. Especially with, there's so much information and it's good information, but I think that what we need to get back to is when people, remove the animal products out of their diet, remove the processed food, especially the oils. So meat, dairy, and processed food, especially oils, let's work on that. Once we get that down, then we can move on. But, we have people, starting out, never heard of plant-based, and then the next, in 2 weeks later, they're asking about, supplements and enzymes, and it's like, just eat plants. Like, just eat plants. Do that first. When you get really good at that, and you want to learn more, but, focus on the easy stuff and get that down first,
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we overcomplicate it. And one of the things that does is that trips us up because then we think we can never do it. And the other thing that I think is really important, and as an educator, I'm sure you realize this, is that there's a lot of misinformation or information that is contradictory. And when you have two sets of information and they're saying the opposite thing of each other. So say one says, nightshades, for example. Tomatoes are great for you. And then another person saying nightshades are bad for you. Now you're thinking, what is right and what is wrong? And indecision or confusion causes you usually to make a poor choice. And so I think getting the truth out there as much as possible and trying to tell people, look, it's so much more simple. Don't worry about all these fancy words, all these scientific things, because at the end of the day, they're going to be contradictory. There's going to be 1,000 studies and 20 of them are going to say it's bad for you. And even if 480 say it's good for you, those 20 will be loud voices because they're contradictory and they make a lot of money. You make more money by going against the grain than you do going with the grain. People don't want to hear what they already know. They want to hear something that either one enables a bad habit. So if you start to say that, coffee a day is great for you, wine a day is actually beneficial. If you start to say things that are falsehoods, or maybe they're healthy or healthier for you, then you start to cause this problem where you're giving people, one, you're enabling them with information that's false, or you're enabling them with information that's not necessarily true. And that gets tricky too, because I think there's, like you're saying, we do need to get to a point when you are super healthy, you can look into that and you can start to realize that, especially if you get really into it, that's great. But we do need to get to a point where people just realize it's really, really minimal. Just eat fruits, eat vegetables, don't think about it too much, eat less, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and when you get that all done, then you should check out the microbiome because it's super interesting. But it's already kind of done. Like you don't have to do anything. Just if you eat beans, the fiber in beans will feed that farm in your belly, and it's all good to go. And but it is interesting, and we should like. I'm not trying to make light of not trying to learn more about this because we should, but I always feel like the people that need to just get the basics done are the ones. And I think maybe because I would have used it too for an excuse like there's so much confusion out there. Like, should I eat a potato with the skin on or skin off? You know what? I'm going to go have a Twinkie. Like, and that was my mentality. So it just becomes an excuse to just do stupid stuff.
Yeah. So one more thing I want to talk about is during that course of that weight loss. So I am, the Pro Section Challenge. I only eat fruits and vegetables. I don't eat any processed food. So I obviously advocate for that. I know it works. I've seen it work thousands and thousands of times. But at the same time, I also like to hear about how people's progress is, how they got there, what they did, what they ate. And I know you talked about you switched from red meats to turkey because a lot of people do take small steps, and they may seem like small steps to people from the outside, but to a person on the inside that's actually doing it, it's a huge step. And people removing sugary drinks, that's one that all of a sudden someone removes Coke from their diet and they're losing 100 pounds. There's ways you can lose a lot of weight not on a plant-based diet, and that's fine. And people can get down to a healthy weight and then they can switch to a plant-based diet. Whatever gets them to a healthier and happier life, that's really what matters. So during that journey, can you just go over like kind of a timeline of what you were eating and how the weight came off? So was it like in 1 month you lost 100 pounds? In 1 month you made a switch to eating? I know this is kind of tricky, but just kind of like a summary of kind of how it went.
No, it's not. I just laughed at the 1 month 100 pounds thing because that will be a heck of a diet.
Yeah,
Um,
that would be impressive.
but you know, I guess I'll do the timeline, but I think it's important because I fall back into this trap too. When someone says something, they're trying to eat really healthfully and eat in plant based, and all right, so I won't say the brand, but let's say they have a burger that's just loaded with fat and oil. Um, Basically, the only difference is it has no cholesterol from a normal burger. And like, I just want to throw my arms up and like, what are you thinking? But what we have to be cognizant of is the biggest thing that I can do to help people is get them to realize that what they put in their mouth matters. And that's a huge step for, especially people that were in my position. When I do a lot of my talks and stuff, I try to see myself back at 400 pounds. Even being like crippled, like I ran my first half marathon with a valid handicap pass, right? So if you would have told me when I was in braces and stuff to go run a 5K to get healthy, like I would have just kicked you out of my house. So we had to be careful. But I think the biggest thing, the most important thing, is for people, anybody, to realize that what they eat actually matters to their body. So if that switch is going from a porterhouse steak to a turkey burger, and I know like a lot of my plant-based friends will blast me for saying that, it's a step. And the important thing is to just keep taking that next step, just like that next plate, to always be striving to get it a little bit cleaner and a little bit better. So for me, my diet consists of a lot of red meat and cheese, like really sharp, high-fat cheese. So the first thing I did was ditch the red meats, and then we started eating a lot of turkey and chicken, and then I would eat like mozzarella cheese. And in my mind, even yogurt, like for me to eat a yogurt, that was a big deal. To come out of my tree stand from hunting and eating a yogurt, if my friends saw me, that they would like, oh man. So looking back, I realized that yogurt is so unhealthy. But at the time, I thought like, man, that was like, I might as well be a doctor for eating that. So basically, then I went into the yogurt, and I would swap out the potato chips for the pretzels. This is before I was plant based. And I kept getting better. I did do Atkins for a while, That was actually before. So I had lost like 50 pounds doing Atkins. Oh man, that was a dream. You know, I could eat chicken wings and cheese and bacon. And I did, you know, for a few months I did. And I lost a pretty good amount of weight. But man, when it came back on, that's when I really ballooned up over 400. Because once, you know, your body craves carbs for a reason. Like that's what we're supposed to be eating. So eventually you're going to crack. You can only do it so long, you're going to crack. And so once I cracked and brought the carbs back in, I just, like, my weight skyrocketed. But so in time, you know, the chips to the pretzels, I was drinking a ton. I was drinking 2 liters of diet wild cherry Pepsi every single day of my life. And so that kind of fell out. And it just got cleaner and cleaner. And then when I watched Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, that's where the switch flipped to animal products completely out of my diet. And then I really saw some momentum pick up. So to answer your question, I probably lost, say, 60, 70 pounds that first year. Then when I went plant-based, probably honestly, by 1 year being plant-based, I was pretty close to, I'll say within 25, 30 pounds of where I am now. So it happened pretty rapidly. But again, like I can't stress enough that this is not a scale thing. This is totally about getting healthy, and the weight will take care of itself, really.
Yeah. In terms of having long-term success, because if you constantly think of it as a scale thing, it may work for some people, it may work for not work for others. And that's the thing. Everyone's different in terms of the way they get there, the way they go through this process. But in terms of what I've seen from a general consensus of people is that when you really make that switch in terms of, I just want to live a healthier and happier life, and it's not about, I want to lose 10 pounds in the next day, I want to lose 20 pounds, and this is exaggeration, you can't lose 10 pounds in a day. But when you have that switch towards like, I want to genuinely live a healthier and happier life, I want to appreciate every single day, and I want to think about everything that I eat, then the weight just comes off because you're making healthier choices every single time, and those healthy choices lead to the results. So, but then that's a long-term success because now you've made a switch in your mentality. Now you've formed good habits, and it's hard to break habits. Just as hard as it is, this is what I think a lot of people maybe don't understand. Just as hard as it is to break a bad habit. So if you're eating Cheetos every single day and you're like, I have to break eating these Cheetos, that's going to be challenging. But just as hard as it is to break that habit, it's going to be just as hard to break a healthy habit. So if you're eating bananas every single day and then you try not to eat a banana, that's going to be challenging too. So once you form these like ingrained healthy habits, it's very hard to eat bad. And I know that sounds crazy for people. What do you mean you don't crave when you walk by a Shake Shack? I get sick when I walk by a Shake Shack now. I literally, I can't even look at fast food. I used to love Taco Bell. I look at Taco Bell and I literally almost throw up. And it took that ability to know exactly what's happening and have this healthy habit that's so ingrained in me. And it took me going to the produce section every single day to form that. It was just like I needed boundaries, and that was my boundary. I knew that here's a little box that I'm going to stay within. And if I only stay in here, after a certain amount of time, it'll just be so habitual. Like it becomes a second home. It becomes it's like riding a bike. It's, you know, it's so hard to ride a bike at first. It's so challenging. I'm falling. As a kid, it took me a long time to ride a bike. So I don't know if I was a little slow, but I got up and finally I'm riding on the bike and I'm coasting down the street, and it's like, that was so easy. Oh my God. How did I not know how to do that for so long? And then forever, you know how to ride that bike. And I think that's the same thing with eating healthy. It may seem daunting, it may seem challenging because you're forming a new habit, you're breaking an old habit, but once you're up and you're going, it's really hard to go the opposite way. But if you do a fad diet, but if you do a scale, if you're chasing a scale or you're chasing a macronutrient or those things, then it's easier to trip up because one of the things that a lot of diets are doing, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that diets aren't forming healthier habits. What they're doing is limiting bad habits. And if you're letting that little habit still kind of sit there down below, it's going to get back up. And that's
it's kind of like on pause, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly what it is. You're pausing it. And so like there's the biggest ones like Weight Watchers, and I know it's helped a lot of people, and I appreciate anyone that it's helped and that it's done a lot for people. But if you think about it, they're not telling you to eat better food, they're telling you to eat less bad food. And that still hasn't taken out the root of the problem, because sugar is very addicting, fat is very addicting. These things are very hard to kick. So as soon as you're not on it and you're not counting your points or tracking, you're off track because you're still eating what is technically okay, but it's just you're eating more of it and you're not eating that limited quantity that was getting those results. So until you switch it and you flip it, because if you have a bad day on a plant-based diet and you just eat like way too many avocados or way too much brown rice, like you said, it's not going to be as bad as it would be if you ate 20 Twinkies because you were only allowed to have a quarter of a Twinkie that day. So it's really making a shift and your way you think about food and the way you think about health. And then that, you're like you said, you get the long-term results. It'll last until you die. It'll be a great habit to have, but that it's hard to get that shift. And I think that's the thing that we're all trying to educate people and trying to help people get to sooner than later.
Right, and I think what it is recognizing what food is, really. I mean, like, I don't see, like, we go through the drive-through now to get a coffee, and I see all those sandwiches that I used to eat. Like, my mind does not even classify that as food anymore. It's kind of weird how that works, but, you know, once you get to the point where it's not even food, like, I won't eat, like, because it's just gross. It's not food. So, yeah, it's interesting. And Doug Lyle, I'm sure, have you ever read The Pleasure Trap?
I haven't, but I do know about him, but I haven't read that book. I should.
Yeah, it's or watch his TED Talk. That's pretty cool. He talks a lot about that. And once you break through, you know, that first stage of this hyper palatable food being normal, you know, you're gonna go. It's not gonna be easy in the beginning, right? It's just like my juice fast. The first 3 days were hell. But what happens is that ceiling starts lowering once you're not exciting that palate with all those like hyper processed foods, and that ceiling will come down, and that'll be your new normal. And then the worst thing you can do is go break that again, because then you have to do that all over again. So I'm totally with you on the, you know, the whole abstinence thing is the easiest way to kick these habits is just don't reintroduce them ever again. And some people, like, that scares some people, but eventually you'll get to the point where it's not, you know, it's obviously, you know, a kale salad isn't going to be as tantalizing as, you know, a really good burrito. Like, I'm not saying that, but when you start recognizing it, what food really does to you, it's a pretty easy choice once you get used to it.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that there's billions of dollars put into the taste of their food in fast foods, and there also is so much money put into advertising. So not only are they mentally making you think that it tastes better by having a beautiful girl like Carl's Jr. having, you know, this gorgeous girl eating this burger, making it seem like it's so good, or having this, you know, man's man or an athlete eat it to make it seem like it's, you know, this amazing thing, but then they also spend all this money to create it to make it taste the same and make it trick all of your senses and all of your taste buds and make it hit. Like, they think about all of those things. It's a business and it's a product, and they try to make that product as good as they possibly can and make it so that you'll eat it as much as you possibly can. And so I think that's what a lot of people don't realize as well, is that, you know, broccoli is amazing and these foods are good, and I'll say it, your taste buds change, your cravings change, and this food will taste as good, if not better, than the other food. But is it going to taste as good as, if not better, in the first month? Probably not. In the second month? Definitely not. In the third month, now you're getting closer, but it's going to take 4, 5, 6 months. So you have to really hang in there, and you have to kind of go with the blows. You're going to have to go through the cravings. You're going to have to go through the hunger pangs. You're going to have to go through. It's not going to be super easy at the first, but if you can get past that, the tough seas, then it gets pretty smooth, and it starts to think that then you get the health. What happens is you start to feel, you know, I called my mom. This was like 4 or 5 months into the Pro Section Challenge. I called my mom, and I was visiting my aunt, and for like a reunion thing that we were doing, and I said, "Mom, I don't know why, but I feel like Superman." And it was the weirdest thing that I was saying. Like, I felt like a superhero, and it makes people say, "Oh man, it's cheesy," but I felt the best I ever felt in my entire life. Like, I just felt physically fit. I had so much energy. I was beaming. I was glowing, and this was something. And I had been an athlete. I never really had that much trouble with weight, but it was something within me that just made me feel better than I've ever felt in my entire life. And it was a high like I've never felt in my entire life. It was such a high that, like, I was smiling and calling my mom and telling her I felt like a superhero. I never called my mom and told her I was like a superhero before. It becomes almost addicting in a good way. It's this habit that makes you feel like you're just like, I got to eat that stuff because I can't not feel like that, because that's just, it becomes almost like you're selfishly helping yourself. And,
right.
and it just, right. But again, it takes taking a risk. because a lot of people don't have the information that is necessary. A lot of people, one of the things I realize a lot of times, people are like, that's not enough calories, or I could eat 10 times that. We say things without doing them. And I think it's very important that whenever you say something, unless it's something very bad, but just try it, just do it. Because before you try it, you don't know that there's any truth to it. So maybe you'll say, oh, that fruit salad isn't going to make me full in the morning. Go try to eat that much fruit. I guarantee you, you'll be full. But until you know that, it won't make a difference. I can tell you that all I want. I can say, go eat half that watermelon, a banana, and some oranges, and you'll be stuffed. They won't believe it. And until you try it, you won't know it. So that's one of the things that happens to me so often, is that people are like, oh, I can't believe this. I can't believe how cheap it was. I can't believe how full I am. I can't believe how good I feel. And I can believe it, and you can believe it. But I understand why they couldn't believe it. But how do you get them to believe it? Only way is really just to do it. You have to do it.
Yeah.
But
the results. Well, and that's the thing. Like, if I can get people to experience results and how they feel, that will keep them in the game. And so that's why it's so important. We talk about that transitioning, but I do my best to get people to just jump in with both feet, going 100%. Because they're going to get 100% results in days, And my hope is that initial result will just keep, fueling. And, the better they get at it, the more results they get. And then that becomes their new superhero normal, really is what I want to see happen.
Yeah, I agree. I've been trying to do that as well. It's the all-in moment, because I've noticed that as well. It's like a spark. If you can get someone to dive headfirst, then what happens is they start to get results pretty quickly, because you do get results really quickly. And as soon as you start to see that, you start to beam. And the more in you are, the better the results are. So if you're only dipping your toes in, and you're maybe adding a little bit of fruits and vegetables to your plate, that's great. And then we should celebrate that. And no one should ever take that away from anyone, because it does work for people. It worked for you. But at the same time, to have a lot of people get a lot of success. And the other thing that occurs is, which I think is maybe even more important than ourselves, is that we then go and help others. When you have a lot of success and you're shining and you're bright, and your inner circle, if it's your family members, because your wife done a tremendous job with this as well, and your whole family is healthy now. So you start to beam. You become like this light. Everyone starts to ask you questions, and you're forced to answer them just because people are saying, like, what are you doing? Why are you so happy now? How did you lose all that weight? And now you're educating people without even trying. It's not like you're going up to someone and saying, oh, you know how I lost all this weight? What you're doing is the questions are coming at you, and you're educating and helping someone, maybe saving someone's life without even trying, because you saved your own life. And that's one of the things that I think, that if you can get people to go all in, they'll get results. If they get results, their family members will start to do it. If their family members start to do it, their friends will start to do it. If their friends will start to do it, their doctors will hear about it. If their doctors hear about it, they'll tell their patients about it. And then we build this really great thing where we start to win, back people's health, and people start to have a life again. And that's kind of why that jumping all in is really essential.
Yeah, for real. They want to know what you have that they don't have. So, and that's, I'm sure you get that too. I get probably half of my emails and messages are how they can help someone else, family member or whatever. And honestly, like, I know that there's nothing you can say. My wife couldn't have said anything to me to get me to change. Like, I had to be the one that wanted to change. But really, I say the only thing you can do, but it's a big thing, is just live life in a way that people want what you have. So the better you can live your life, the more healthy you can get yourself, the better change you can, have happen in people that you love. And that's huge. And, just going back to touch on what you said about, like, the weight loss thing, people go on the fad diets and stuff. And why do we have to wait for crises and stuff to be the catalyst for change? I get real with people, and I think as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize that there's you can project your life, like, where. So one of the stories that I tell people, and I think this kind of nails it. I did a talk for an insurance company, and this guy was, like, waiting around, like, in the conference room. It was a small talk for a wellness committee, and he was, like, waiting around. I could tell he wanted to talk to me, but I really had to get out of there. And so he finally, like, cornered me, and he said, I have a question for you. So you lost 200 pounds, you're super healthy. He said, let's say There's a pizza on the table. No one's around. No one's going to know. What stops you from eating that pizza? And honestly, I have no idea where I got this from, but I just turned to him and I said, look at, I said, in 10 years, my daughter's going to be coming to visit me. And she's going to be coming for two reasons. One, she's going to be bringing her kids over so I can play with my grandkids in the backyard. Or two, she's going to be bringing me diapers for the nursing home. And I said, that piece of pizza is going to dictate what that, you know, why she's coming over. And he started crying. And he did. He went plant-based, like, pretty shortly after that. So this is a real thing. This is not about losing weight. This is our families. Like, this is, it's my job. People, I'm sorry to be going off here, but people always want to know how to stay motivated. You don't. Like, you're not going to stay motivated to do this, right? But I don't stay motivated to pay my mortgage. But I also realize if I don't pay my mortgage, I'm going to lose my home. And a lot of people aren't motivated to get up and go to work every day, but they do it. So we need to stop looking at food as having to be motivated to eat healthy. It's our job. It's my job as a dad. It's my job as a husband. It's my responsibility to be healthy. I don't need motivation for it, just like I don't need motivation to send the check to the mortgage company. And I think when we frame it as this is about our families. Like, this is about, I watched two of my favorite people die, and I wonder, you know, what would I give to have them back for one day? Is that putting a burger down and eating broccoli that day? Like, that's what this means to me. So I think when you put an importance, this has nothing to do with a scale and everything to do about how precious life is and how valuable it is. And we value our life by what we put in our mouths. That's my opinion, but that's how I see it. So I don't need to be motivated, you know. So sorry for that little rant, but that just came out.
I love it. I love it, man, because I agree 100% with it. I think that's the truth. We oftentimes, you know, we'll joke about diet, we'll joke about food, we'll say it's a treat, but it's the most serious thing you do every single day, and it is life or death. And it's time that we start to have those honest, real conversations about this. There are millions of people. This is the number one thing killing people. The sooner we just say it like we see it, right? This is making people disabled. This is killing people. This is getting people amputated. This is people taking 15 medications. This is people not being able to walk. This is very, very serious topic. And I know we try to talk about it in a positive light and stay smiling, but in the end of the day, this is very real. And this will really hurt you if you don't do something about it. And that's why it isn't just about weight. And it's good to lose weight. It's very essential because there are a lot of health benefits of that. But it's really about, are you going to be around 5 years from now? Are you going to be around 10 years from now? Are these going to be the best years of your life, or were the best years of your life 20 years ago? And that's the decision you have to make. And the way you choose is what you're putting in your mouth. So you're right. And you know, it's great that you're out there talking. I got to go in 1 second, but I want to talk about the company that you've created because I think it's amazing. Yeah. And I want to talk about, before my phone dies, I want you to talk about it a little bit because I want people to start to check it out and I want people to start to try it. So it's Fat Man Foods, correct?
Yeah, but don't try it unless you're super local.
Okay, unless you're local.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of a very weird thing. We are super busy. My page takes quite a bit of my time. I've been trying to back off on Facebook a little bit, but I just told my wife on the way back from Lake Placid, I said, we have got to stop doing so many presentations. And literally we drove. So on the 6-hour ride home, we booked 3 more presentations on the car ride. So, and one of them actually, I think is out by you. You're out in California, right?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles.
So I forgot the name of this place, but it's not. I think it's like 40 miles outside of LA. It's the Whole Conference by Dr. David Lowe. I don't know. Dr. Michael Greger is going to be there. But anyways, so we're trying to slow down. We have a crazy good life. My wife has a pretty successful business. I love my job teaching. So we're trying to slow down. But what was happening is we were finding a disconnect when we teach a class. My classes, because typically I lecture. Like, that's what I do. I teach a lot of physics and stuff. So typically when I teach, I lecture. And that's kind of how I'm used to rolling. And when we started teaching these classes, people are like, wait a minute, we want to learn how to cook. So my lecture class, talking to everyone about where do I get my protein and stuff, turned into how to cut up an onion, how to use the Instapot, and all that kind of thing. But we love it. You know, we have fun doing it.